I'm okay with this look. All right. Are we ready now?
Yeah.
All right. Starting us off in 3, 2, 1. Man, what an intro. Who wrote that? What a genius intro. What's up, everybody? Welcome to our latest episode of Speak Freely. I am, of course, Mr. Speak. Alongside me, as always, is Mr. Freely. What's up, dude?
Hey.
That's an old joke that
Are you? Yeah, you're gonna stick with it.
Yeah, it's my thing, man. It's my tagline. We're just gonna jump into it because we're probably gonna discuss this a lot. We're discussing Nolan films today. In anticipation for Tenet, which should have released about 1,000 times by now, but thanks to COVID, has been delayed yet again.
And it may or may not be released.
And it may or may not be released this year. Honestly, at this point, if we want to talk about it real quick, at this point, I really think they're going to push it to 2021. It makes sense. They did it with Fast and Furious. Why not with a Nolan film?
Which is weird because Fast and Furious was the first one to push until next year.
Yeah, and everyone thought that was crazy, but it turns out it was a very savvy move.
They're really smart. Good for Universal.
Yeah, good for Mr. Gasoline. I mean Mr. Diesel. Oops.
I see what you did there.
I know. Anyways, that's a terrible impression. I apologize. But in anticipation for Tenet, we decided to rank all of our favorite Nolan films. Now, before we get into it, we're only going to really discuss our top 3 because me and Brian can literally talk our ears off for the next, 24 hours just discussing the films because we just love discussing films with each other. It's our thing.
Yeah.
So we're strictly only going to really discuss our top 3. And we're only counting original movies directed by Nolan. So we're not counting Insomnia or his shorts or his documentary or the TV things he's done. It's only his original directed movies, which in total are 9 films. So in no particular order, we have Following, Memento, Batman Begins, Prestige, Dark Knight, Inception, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, and Dunkirk. It's not Tenet yet because we haven't seen it. We probably never will because life sucks. I'm just kidding. That's so pessimistic. I don't want to do that to you. No, we'll eventually see it. Please. And we're going to go back and forth. So we're going to start off with our top 3, and I'm going to let Mr. Kuno Stars start it off for us. So I'm excited. We legit have no idea. We didn't tell each other what our top 3 were. Remember, it's gonna be cake because everything's cake, right? That's a meme now, right? Everything's cake except actual cake.
Which is really hard to bake. Do
I not get it? Anyways, what's your top 3 cakes? I mean, sorry, your top 3 Nolan, starting with number 3.
Number 3 is Bundt cake.
It's really dense cake.
Soft and buttery and just like a Nolan film.
Soft? I don't know about soft. Buttery? Maybe.
Really dense? Sure. Number 3 is story by Nolan, which is Man of Steel. No, we're not doing that right.
I was about to go. Cut. Brian.
Jeez, I listed these top 3 films in no particular order, hoping that by now I would have an order. So I'm just gonna.
I just want to say I'm so glad that, in a lot of ways, you've changed a lot. You've matured a lot. You're a successful chef and all that stuff. But in a lot of ways, you haven't, and I'm glad to see that one of those ways is the procrastination that you and I both established in our high school years still hasn't changed.
Not at all.
Because legit, I know it's like I literally made my list a little bit earlier than you, and by a little bit earlier, I mean literally 5 minutes before our call started. Rank these. This was my idea. Oh crap!
All right.
I just went with pure gut feeling too.
So
just close your eyes. You want to flip it?
So no, I got it. Number 3 for me, it's gonna have to be Following.
Ooh. Okay.
His very first film.
Wow. Okay. Get into it.
Maybe recency bias, because that's the last film that I watched right before doing this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. So, first of all, I'm really not into Nolan as a filmmaker, technically. I think his films are very high concept and extremely dense, and it's kind of for the same reason why I don't really like Grant Morrison as a comic book writer. It gets a little too wonky for me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That said, having like watched these films over again, some for the first time, others for second, third, fourth time, I've actually kind of started appreciating him more, right? And when you watch Following, you kind of see where you can see the map of his like film process in Following. Things that he does throughout all of his films kind of get a start here in Following. Some things I wrote down that I've noticed is like one, like the use of the ticking time clock that he uses in practically all his films. Starts with this, and it helps build the tension as you're watching. Because like maybe it's the video game aspect of it, where like when you play Super Mario and the time starts running out, the music changes, gets a little faster.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the ticking time here. Like as it's ticking, you just have this like feeling of anxiety, like you're running out of time. And whether or not you actually notice the ticking time, it has an effect on you.
Mm-hmm.
He uses it here really, really well with his fractured, narrative structure. It's a big factor in this film, and I think that he uses that plus the time sound as a way to really build tension, which is also a running theme in all of his movies. But that's what I've noticed is like his main themes are always it's time and tension and really like appreciating like an individual's presence in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how one person can make a difference in his immediate environment, if not like the entire world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just saw that film today too, Following. And
Okay.
yeah, I have thoughts on it. We'll get there when we get there. But I definitely agree with you on the whole, like you can clearly see the foundation of like the things that Nolan really loves to do. Like the whole time jumping thing starts with Following, right? If you watched it, and by the way, spoilers for all the Nolan films in case you haven't seen them, if that wasn't freaking clear. Right away, like if I remember correctly, like the movie starts like at the end, right? The movie starts with something at the end, but you don't quite know it's the end until like after you've seen the whole film, and he like jumps back and forth. And I will say the clever thing I like about the way he like lets the audience know what like time they're in is purely by how the main character looks, right?
Yes.
Because the
haircut.
Yeah, exactly, the haircut and the way he dresses, and then also you can kind of tell because at some point he gets beaten up. So you have him, the main guy, I guess our protagonist, even though he's not really a good guy, but our protagonist, right? He has that long hair, he has his whatever goatee or whatever. He looks kind of like a creep, right? And then he cuts his hair, he puts on a suit, he looks a little more suave. And at the end, he still has his haircut and he's suave, but he's got like a cut on his lip. He's a little beat up and bruised. So Nolan uses visuals in a very interesting way, especially because the film's in black and white. He really uses the visual of the protagonist, of the main character, to let you know like around what time we're in. And it's very interesting. Yeah, he very much loves to skew time and the whole tension thing. And I noticed that too, by the way. I will say this. I noticed the score right away. I don't know. It was the way I heard it, because I heard it on my laptop through IFC. a subscription through Prime Video, and it was really loud and it was a little annoying at first. I was like, I hate this. I do not like how this sounds at all. I get what they're trying to do. It's very like for all you music nerds out there, it's very Penderecki-ish almost, and almost like Chrono's Black Angels almost, where it's like it's very dissonant and very sharp sounding if you want to put a quality to it. And I get it. I don't think it worked for me right off the bat, having that be the first thing you hear in the film, because it's very disorienting. But I get why Nolan did it, and or at the very least, I get why he let his composer do it. And I can kind of see there too how Nolan really uses music to kind of build, like you said, tension in this film. Very interesting choice. Anything else to add?
I guess like the one thing I really loved about this film is the history of it and like the process that he had to go through to make it. Because it's super low budget. It was $6,000. He would only film on the weekends, and he would only film during the times that his actors were available. So it's super constrained, and he didn't have the best equipment, right? Really no lighting that he could use. So that's why he would use like windows as like his lighting. And that's a thing he uses in all his films too, right? One that comes to mind because I recently saw was Interstellar. Right, Matthew McConaughey is standing by a window at, I think, the beginning of the film. And what else? Batman Begins, when he first meets Ra's al Ghul, like, he's by a window. It's like a dark cell, I guess. He's locked up.
Yeah, he's in solitary confinement when you
right.
Yeah.
The light comes from the window. So that's another technique he uses in a lot of his films. Like I say, but just the way that he had to kind of get creative. Like that's the kind of stuff I can really appreciate and respect out of Christopher Nolan as a creator.
But yeah, you're number 3 following. Awesome. All right, I guess it's my turn. All right, my number 3, and again, it might be recency bias, but I honestly don't think that. I honestly think the more I view this film, the more I appreciate it and love it. And honestly, at least for right now, it might change. You never know. Like things change like the seasons. But for right now, my number 3 is Interstellar. I know I know it's one of Nolan's more controversial films. I get it. And I will admit, I had a similar kind of feeling watching this movie the first time, kind of the same way I did Dunkirk, where I wasn't crazy about it because it is a dense film. There's a lot thrown at you. So the first time you watch it, you're just trying to kind of like keep up and understand the world that's established, what's going on, the whole concept of time relativity and black holes and what have you, blah, 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 blah. But the more I viewed it, especially this last time I viewed it, and by the way, I think it's safe to say both of us in the last week or so, we rewatched all of Nolan's films basically to kind of make sure like we did our work. All right, it's not based on like we have at least watched these films for the most part twice, for the most. But yeah, watching it this third time and not concentrating on what the world is, because I already knew what it is, just concentrating on the story and the themes of what Nolan's trying to do. I really loved it, man. It really, and it might be too just the situation I'm in with COVID and stuff like that. And me personally, like as a struggling musician and stuff, and there's not being gigs, commission work isn't coming in as much as before because everyone's struggling. The whole concept of like hope and how human beings are able to survive, not through being selfish and egotistical in terms of survival, but because we have that one thing that no other being, as far as we know, experiences, which is like love. You know what I mean? And that being the connection that goes through time and space, and also gravity, but whatever. I don't know, man. I loved it because the whole movie is just like, it starts off a little pessimistic, right? It's like the world's a big old dust bowl, right? We're losing all of our agriculture, right? The movie starts off with like wheat was the first thing to go, and they just lost okra. It's the last harvest of okra ever, and all there is corn. Everything is freaking corn. And essentially the world's eventually going to turn itself against us, and we kind of have to leave. Like humanity has to leave, and so they send these people up in space to try to find habitable planets, and then everything starts to slowly unravel, right? The whole concept of like being able to help human beings leaves with like Michael Caine's character Dr. Brand was a lie. when they go to find Dr. Mann and his planet, him saying it was habitable was a lie too. So it's like you see the ugliness of humanity, the ability of humanity, what they're capable of doing to survive, right? The whole being cognitive of the fact that, yeah, we hurt each other sometimes. And sometimes we might think we're doing it for the right reasons, right? We say a little white lie or to spare someone's feelings or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, is it really a good thing that we're doing? And the movie kind of confronts you with that theme. And then ultimately, we're able to succeed because of Matthew McConaughey's character, because he loves his kids. He loves his daughter. And he wants, more than him seeing his daughter and his kids again, he wants his kids to thrive and be able to move on without him and create that legacy in a sense. He loves his kids so profoundly where he eventually gets to the point where he's doing it for not just for them, but for all of humanity, which includes them, not just to be like, I'm going to go see my kids, right? And I don't know, man, just the theme of like, of love, as cheesy as it sounds on paper, the whole theme of like, it's love that ultimately pushes through time. It's love that gives us legacy. It's the one thing that we can't explain because there's no, it's like Anne Hathaway's character, also named Dr. Brand, the daughter of Michael Caine's character. Like she explains like love is the one thing we, like, there's no real social or economical advantage to it. Like we love people who had died. Like where's the advantage in that? And it's like, oh shit, that's so true. Like, and I don't know. I like not having to concentrate like what the fuck's going on? What's that wormhole? What's this black hole? What year? Not having to concentrate on that, kind of getting like the world now and just concentrating on the human element of the story and the themes that Christopher Nolan is trying to put forth. And then understanding how he uses pessimism and like nihilism and tension to get to the point of like, yeah, but that's not real. This is real. Optimism, hope, we will survive because we love each other and blah, blah, blah. Especially now where we kind of see the world, depending on where you look, right? You kind of see people like loving each other with the whole Black Lives Movement, people protesting like, hey, we got to take care of one another. And then you see people ultimately being selfish and hating each other with people refusing to wear masks and stuff like that. To see Nolan kind of put his stamp on it and being like, yeah, humanity is both, right? There's good and ugly sides to it, but ultimately we'll persevere, we'll get through it because at the end of the day, humanity is this. I don't know. To me, it hit me hard, dude. Like the first time I watched it, it didn't hit me hard. I was just like, I just thinking about it. Like, what does it all mean? What is the Tesseract? Like, oh, it was just one little girl's bedroom, like blah, blah, blah. But then watching it this third time and just like seeing how like the they, right? They were able to help Matthew McConaughey's character connect to his daughter just simply based on the fact that he loved his daughter, right? That was the connection that let him go into the black hole and able to affect gravity to ultimately communicate with her. Just the fact that it was love. It's love, Murph. It's love. And it's just like, it hit me, man. Like it broke my heart in a good way. You know what I mean? I was like, at the end, I was a blubbering mess, but not because I was sad. I was like, yeah, man, we'll persevere. There is love and hope in the world and we'll be okay. It hit me, dude. So for me, and it might be recency bias too, because I did watch all of these films this last week, but really thinking about it, I was like, I gotta put, for me, it's number 3 is Interstellar for sure. So I know, everyone come at me, I know.
I will say, watching it the second time, I loved it. No, I liked it much better. That is such a really strong word.
I get it. No, yeah. I get it because the first time I watched it, I was like, I like it. It's very ambitious. It's probably his longest film, right? Next to Dark Knight Rises. I think they're almost the same length. It's and that I will admit too that first act, like the first time I saw it, I was like, this first act is forever. It's almost like the first hour of the film. But watching it now and understanding what Nolan's doing in that first act, where he's literally establishing the connection that's going to save humanity, like he's showing you like the connection of like Matthew McConaughey and his connection with his kids, especially Murph. Like he does that a lot too, right? Whether you realize it or not as a viewer, Nolan tells you what the end's going to be, whether you realize it or not. He shows you or he directly tells you, and you just don't get it till you have the whole freaking picture in front of you. He literally does this almost with all his films. And I love
I would say like 90% of his films are like...
He does like, that. He's that kind
he reveals everything like bit by bit until you fully understand.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the first time you view it, because it's all just new information, you don't get it. But then when you go back and you watch it a second or third time, especially because now you get the grand scheme of things, and you're looking for the details, you're like, oh crap, it's and that, and like and your head explodes even more. So
Mhm.
yeah, I love it. I know,
I
I
I
know.
will say though, as like it's a film about, like you said, like, love, right, and appreciating the time that you have with the people that you were with. Um, so for a film that is about love and appreciating time, it takes up so much of my time. You know what I mean?
But it's also, I get it. But it's a sci-fi film. It's a space exploration film. You know what I mean? It's heady, but it's a blockbuster film. Like when did it come out? I know it came out in 2014, right? But I'm pretty sure it came out.
Mhm.
At the tail end of the summer. Not the tail end. Oh my god, it was more of a holiday film. It came out in November. So my
Oh,
bad. But it's kind of an epic sci-fi, almost actiony kind of film. You know what I mean? It does have, like, that second act is just pure exploration, right? Like, here's space. We're gonna go explore these 3 planets, and all this crazy crap happens. Then the third act is like him kind of like concluding what he puts in the first act, which is showing like ultimately humanity is gonna survive because we love each other. That's how we get through, not by being selfish and lying, but because humanity loves each other. And eventually that'll be the thing that evolves us into higher beings, apparently. But yeah. All right. So since you started your number three, I'm going to state my number two. And my number two is Inception. And I freaking love this film. It's just fun. It's a fun. This is a summer blockbuster. This came out in July or June, I think, of the year it came out. I'm pretty sure. I'm double checking at IMDb right now. If you can't see the flashing in my eyes, yeah, July 16th of 2010. And the first time you watch it, it's just awe inspiring, right? The whole concept of like the dream realm and what you can do, what you construct, but still kind of like, even though we're in a dream, we still somewhat obey the physical laws of nature because it's just what we're used to, and your brain just kind of fills in that information, whether you're cognitive or not. The whole concept of like Cobb and like is it a dream? Is it not a dream? Is like, and ultimately, I'll try to keep it a little bit short. Ultimately, what I love about Inception, I've watched this film like 5 times. I think today I watched it for like a fifth time. Ultimately, what I love about it is like the film itself is Inception, right? Because Christopher Nolan, this whole film is literally about he's presenting you an idea, right? In this case, a dream of his, which is the film. And he's literally telling you, like he tells people in the film, it's up to you to interpret what the idea is and what it means for you ultimately, right? So he presents all these information. He kind of like inspires the idea in you, but then ultimately how you run with it is up to you. Kind of like what the characters do in the film, right? Like they conspire these levels and these mazes for this one character to try to install an idea in them, but ultimately the character himself, the son of the corporate guy, he ultimately has to come up with the idea, right? He's presented with the information, but ultimately the idea has to come from him or else it doesn't take. And ultimately, that's what the literal film is. That Nolan presents you with the information of Cobb and his story with his wife and his kids and this heist. And at the end of the film, he doesn't show you nor tell you if he legit made it out. In fact, if you really break it down, and if you go on subreddits, dude, there's 1,000 theories. But he literally breaks it down and lets you know, like, what do you think? Do you think the ending was a dream? Do you think the whole thing's a dream? Do you think the dream is only half of the film? It's a quarter of the film? And the fact that he constructs this film so ambiguously well in a good way to where any theory you can come up with about the film, you as an audience member have the evidence to be able to construct and support your theory because it's all there in the film. Because it's ambiguous in that great way where you come up with ultimately what does it mean for you, right? And that's ultimately what dreams are, right? Sometimes we have to interpret our dreams. What do dreams mean for me personally? Like, what did that dream about me walking down the street and all of a sudden the street turns into doggy food and I'm slipping into the dog food? What does that mean, right? Ultimately, that's like the film itself. It's like, what does it mean? Like are the totems real? What was ultimately Cobb's totem? It's But yeah, I just love the fact that it's just one of those films where you can just discuss it endlessly, and you're right and you're wrong at the same time because you ultimately don't know because Christopher Nolan swears he'll never tell us. But I just love that it's one of those discussion films, and plus it's spectacle. It's so awesome to just look at. So number 2 for me is Inception. Oh, and Hans Zimmer score, freaking influential, right? The whole horn blares of dun, 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 which is honestly him just mimicking an alarm, dun, 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 right? That old school alarm sound. But it became so iconic. Like, what trailer for an action film doesn't have those horns now, right?
They all do, yeah.
They all do, and it's such a simple motif. It's just bum, 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 and immediately the first time I heard it, I was like, he's mimicking an alarm. It's so genius. It's so good. All right, yeah. And I'm just kidding. Go.
No, I mean, Inception's not in my top 3. I'll just say that up front. Great film though. Like I said, Christopher Nolan gets really high concept, really heady. He does a lot with Inception, to the point where like the word like Inception, it goes beyond the movie, right? It's become kind of its own little like thing, where now you can be Inception, right? And people just use it as part of their lexicon for anything that's really high concept and hard to understand.
Mm-hmm.
You just, it's Inception.
Yeah, no, I agree, and
yeah, and I think it goes back. So Christopher Nolan is all about philosophy, right? I think a main thing in all his films is he presents an idea, and a lot of it intersects with like an individual who embodies this philosophy, and then how that one person can affect is, like I said, his immediate environment, if not like the whole world. And that's who Christopher Nolan is. Like when he makes films, right? That's his philosophy, is like the art of filmmaking.
mm-hmm.
And he wants to affect the whole world with it. That's the whole reason why Tenet is not going to come out on video on demand before hitting theaters, because that's not the philosophy Christopher Nolan follows. Inception is it's a good measure of who Christopher Nolan is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But again, not in my top 3.
And I would honestly say, like, it's kind of the culmination of what he started, in my opinion, what he started in following in Memento, in terms of like high, heady type of concepts, right? Because Memento, mm-hmm. the whole thing about Memento is him as a filmmaker trying to figure out how does he let the audience feel what the protagonist is feeling, the whole short-term memory loss, right? So the concept of Inception is like, how do I make the audience feel like they're in a dream? Like he and the way he does it, like he presents you with the ideas, but then ultimately at the end he doesn't tell you if you were in a dream or not, right? Like mm-hmm. the way the film works is you can assume it's really what's happening, because the storyline itself is very linear. It doesn't mess around with time too much. It just messes around with the concept of what reality is. And ultimately at the end of the film, because of the little spinning totem, right? He leaves you with that question of like, was it all a dream? And I don't know, I just think it's brilliant. It's one of those like, and it's just a fun film too. Like you just sit down and you can discuss it with your friends for hours, and you're both right and you're both wrong. There's no mm-hmm. way of knowing who is what, because that's the whole point of the film. The whole point of the film is Inception.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you ultimately? What do you think? So, yeah. So that's my top 2. So now
I'm number 2.
You, yeah. Give you also 2 guys. I don't know if you know, but Inception is cake, and cake is Inception.
It's a cake within a cake.
A cake within a cake. It's layers of cake. What's your top 2? What's your number 2?
Number 2 is Dunkirk.
Oh wow! Really?
Yes.
I'm shook. Okay.
I know. So this is what we watched together.
Yeah.
Right? So the first time I saw it, we saw this together. And I told you immediately, I don't get it.
You did. That's why I'm so shocked about this.
Immediately, I was like, I don't get it. But it's one of those films where you have to watch it more than once to understand it, right? As I think with a lot of Nolan's films, you have to watch it more than once to fully understand it. And it's it's interesting because a lot of stories that I like have to deal with character, right? The whole a character's arc is really important to be in terms of storytelling. In Dunkirk, you don't really get character,
Mm-mm.
like not at
Not
all. But
really. You kind of get
you get some protagonists,
yeah.
sure, that you're following, but overall, like it's about the event, right? And it's not even like it's considered like a war film, but it's not really a war film, right? It doesn't really comment on whether like war is good or bad, or it's more of a rescue film, right? Or an escape film, if you want to put it that way. And within that story, like you still get this idea of like what it feels like to be in the film. And so ultimately, it's like the audience is the character that you're following. You are the person you're following in this film because he puts you right in the middle of it. And you know, watching the second time, like I got more of that feeling of like, okay, I feel like I'm in it, and I feel what those people are feeling. Particularly, there's that scene, the first time that shoot, what's his name? The not Gibson, but the other guy, soldier that you first see in the beginning of the film.
Oh, I forget his name, but I know who you're talking about. The guy we follow in the 1 week timeline, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he the first time he gets into the ship and then goes down into like the holding area where the camera it feels like it should be like your vision of what the boat is if you were standing there.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts you in the middle of everything, and that's at least for me, like I kind of had to like tell myself, okay, so like I am this character. It's the kind of RPG like video games that I like. Right? I don't want to like it's fun to be Batman. It's fun to be Spider-Man, right? But I like games like Dragon Age where like I can make my own character and then, affect the world that way and be whoever I want it to be. So I don't have to follow someone else's philosophy, right? And in this film, it's kind of the same thing that you can be a part of it, and you don't have to know what's right or wrong necessarily because of what someone else tells you, right? You can kind of just decide for yourself. Yeah, that's another thing. This film has like little to no dialogue, which is really weird for a Nolan film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was like one of the first observations you had was like, wow, there's all this exposition in it, and I was like, yeah. I'll say this: it's not in my top 3. Spoiler.
Okay.
But because I went more with like my own personal tastes, more than like I thought was Nolan's best. It's like, what do I consider my favorite Nolan films? That being said, up to this date, I really do believe that film is Nolan's masterpiece so far. Like it's everything Nolan, right? It's like it does the whole jumping around in time thing, which was established in like his first couple of films, right? But he does it and then also too, it just presents you with the information, which is kind of like what he does in like Inception, right? And but he trusts the audience a lot in that film. He trusts you to keep up with him. He trusts you to understand what's going on. He trusts you to remember who's who. And by the way, just real quick, I saw the character's called Tommy, but I don't even remember in that film anybody ever calling him in anything. He's just
no, I don't think he did.
Yeah, but the whole point is like it's Nolan presenting you with this moment in time, this weird kind of not really a battle, but it's like the English and the French lost and they're retreating from France, right, during World War II, Dunkirk. And it's this weird situation that you don't think about, that soldiers were just stranded there for a week, hoping to leave. And he presents you with all that information, but it's just visual. It's almost just purely visual. There's dialogue, not to say there isn't, but it's very, very little dialogue, like you said, and there's no exposition. It's just he's literally telling you, this is the 1 week timeline when we're with the soldiers. This is the 1 day timeline when we're in the air, and this is the 1 hour timeline when we're on the boat with the sea captains and all that stuff. And it's just, yeah, it's so masterful too. And then this is the epitome of what Nolan's been trying to do in his previous films with the score, where the score really informs the film. Like the score really tells the audience what you should be feeling. more than anything. It's not the
Yeah.
characters of dialogue. It's the score is itself the dialogue almost, I would say. And it's really
It's the narrator.
yeah.
It's kind of dictating the story.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. Yeah, again, it's not in my top three. But I will say, as far as like, I guess like artsy films or Nolan's film, I really consider that as a masterpiece. Like, it's just the culmination of everything he's ever done.
It's like, I know we talk about tension and stuff a lot when we talk about Nolan, but this is like the epitome of tension. And it's tension without the use of words, which is crazy. It's all visual. Right? That one scene where I guess Tommy is face down in the sand as the bombs are falling, and you can just see the bombs one by one like, get closer and closer and closer, and you're expecting it to like hit him as well, but it stops just short. And that's tension building 101. But he uses it so effectively. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, now that I'm thinking about it, not to say there's no exposition in it, there's a little bit. Like, you get a little bit from the what is he, a general or a captain on the deck, on the dock or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Admiral?
about? Yeah. You get a little bit. He kind of informs you of the situation and what's going on. But other than that, other than giving you historical context, because the film kind of needs it, so the audience knows like what era we're in and around what time. It's just like, but here it is. Here's the situation they're in. Now you're gonna live it with them, and you're just like, oh, and it's like I said, it's like the first time I watched this film, personally speaking, I was going through some hardships, and I just wasn't in the right mindset to deal with tension and drama like that. So I kind of hated it when the first time I watched it. Then I watched it again, when I watched it in theaters, didn't love it, was very disappointed. Then it came out on Blu-ray around Christmas the same year, and I bought it, watched it with my family, and I loved it. I was like, why did I hate it so much? And I kind of understood, like, oh, it's because my head was in a very, very bad space. And then I watched it again with my dad, and I watched it again, and then I watched it again with you. Yeah, that film's really good. And this is the other thing too, right? This is what I was having difficulty with. Just because we're ranking Nolan's films, we're not staying from worst to best. Because I honestly think all of his films are really, really good. Like, there's not a mediocre, terrible film in the bunch. You know what I mean? It's just, according to us, what is our favorite or what we consider the best. So, but all these, honestly, I would recommend to anybody listening, like, go and watch all of his films, dude, because they're all really good, legitimately. Even some, Insomnia is good, but it's not really him. That's him remaking something. So that's why we didn't count it. But Insomnia is a good watch too. But yeah, anything else to say about your number two?
Just like it's also an epitome of what Nolan thinks like film should be, which is a visual medium. Because there are a lot of films that are either adapted from a book or can be adapted to a book. You know what I'm saying? With Dunkirk, how do you put this into a novel? Like, how do you write a narrative story?
It had to be like a graphic novel, like
exactly. And
no, I agree. Yeah,
that's Christopher Nolan, like trying to be like, hey, like, film is art, and it's its own thing, and let me show you why.
No, yeah, I agree. I think too. Let me double check, but I think was he the sole writer on this? Like, he didn't, because usually like other films, he usually has like his brother help him write it, or like other people. Like, I know like Memento was like a original short story his brother was thinking about writing. Prestige is based off a book. Obviously, the Dark Knight trilogy, he had DC and Goyer behind him. But I think, he's credited as the only writer for Dunkirk, according to IMDb. That's crazy. Yeah, it's
so story goes, he took that trip across the ocean from France to England, whichever he was going. But he took the trip with his wife, right? His producing partner, Emma Thompson. And being in the boat, they're looking around and they're like, wow, like, civilians did this. Like they went on this trip across. Like it's a dangerous trip to take, and they did it just to save their boys.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where he got this idea of like, okay, like I need people to know what this feels like.
Mm-hmm. And he does it. He does it so masterfully. He really does.
Yeah.
Cinematography then is great. Who's a cinematographer for that film? I'm actually very curious to know.
I looked it up once and I don't remember.
I wonder if I could quickly scan IMDb. IMDb. I don't want the stars and stuff. I don't know how to say this. I think it's Hoyte van Hoytema.
That's right, Hoytema.
Hoytema. Yeah, it's a beautifully shot film.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, Brian. The moment everyone's been waiting for, especially me.
Number one.
Number one.
Should we say it at the same time? I feel like it might be the same.
Is it?
I don't know.
Think it is.
No? Okay. Number one for me, Batman Begins.
Ooh. Okay.
Is it different?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd be like, Batman Begins. You'd be like, Insomnia.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Prestige.
Batman Begins, number one. Over the Dark Knight. It's a perfect film. It is amazing. It's his most structured film, I think. Or the most linear. You get some flashbacks, but the way it's structured and the way that it builds upon itself is amazing, right? And I had to watch the whole trilogy again just to make sure like this was my favorite film. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I've seen all three films multiple times.
Mm-hmm. Who hasn't at this point?
Right. It's a 4-act structure, right? You get parts 1, 2, 3, 4, but it all builds upon each other, and it's all about philosophy. It's like Act 1, you get the philosophy of Batman. You kind of have to understand who he is, right, and why he wants to do what he wants to do. And then Act 2, he takes on the crime in Falcone, and you only understand why he's doing that because you got the whole first act of like who Batman is. And then Act 3, he takes on the Scarecrow, who, it's like has been using that crime in Falcone to build like this other like fear network. Right? And then Act 4, you get Ra's al Ghul, right? And that's where he gets a little more heady with like the philosophy of like Ra's al Ghul is basically just like Batman, right? It's altruism for the greater good, just a little bit warped.
Mm-hmm.
But you only get you get the huge reveal at the end of the film, and it only has that great impact because of everything that's been built up before it, right? Where it's a huge circle, right? Where you get Ra's al Ghul in the beginning, and you think he's dead, but you keep hearing his name over and over again in all the preceding acts. And then it gets to the huge reveal, and you're like, holy
Yeah.
Because I didn't see that coming.
That's great. Yeah. And that movie does set up a lot of like Nolan kind of like taking what you do know and twisting it on its head a little bit in the feature films. But yeah, keep going. Sorry I interrupted you, but
it's okay. And it's conflict in all different ways. Like Batman is in conflict with all three of the villain, and it takes that 3-villain like structure from like previous Batman films, but it does it so much better. Right? So Batman's in conflict with all 3 villains, but then all 3 villains are in conflict with each other as well. Where like Scarecrow's in conflict with Falcone, and then they're both scared of Ra's al Ghul. And for good, and then all their philosophies kind of intertwined and conflict with each other as well. But it's a great film. Yeah, and it's one. So I will say though, it kind of goes against his like Inception philosophy, where like it's the story goes, right. Batman, or Bruce Wayne with his family goes to see Zorro in a movie theater. Nolan didn't want to use cinema within cinema. That's why he went to the opera instead. And he's talked about why he's done that. It's because he didn't want people to be taken out of the whole like movie experience by kind of like, acknowledging that like they are watching a movie by seeing a movie inside of a movie. Exactly.
And that movie is cake.
It's not cake actually because he didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't.
But it all goes back to his philosophy of like what film should be. Mm-hmm. It should be an experience in of itself.
I get that, but at the same time, it's like I don't know if I agree with it. I get it, but I don't know if I agree with it because like I take someone like a Quentin Tarantino who will show you a film within a film, but it doesn't automatically remind me of like, oh, I'm watching a movie. It's just they're in a movie theater for this one particular scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but yeah. Yeah. So, keep going. Sorry. Dead air. I have things to say, but I think I should save it till you get your final word in.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
So, for my number one, it was ultimately going to be a Batman film because
has to be.
Yeah, it has to be. Like if anybody knows me, like Batman was my superhero. Like when I was a kid, I was absolutely fascinated and obsessed with Batman the animated series. I used to have my dad get blank VHS tapes and record episodes for me, and I literally wore out those tapes. I would just watch the episodes over and over again. I was obsessed with that film and with the cartoon. And then obviously the 1989 movie, even though I wasn't particularly crazy about it as a kid, like I watched it because it's freaking Batman. But I loved the animated series. Justice League came out, loved it. So for me, the penultimate superhero for me is Batman, and yeah, like up until for me personally, right? And everyone has their argument, but for me personally, up until Nolan's film, I truly felt I didn't have a proper representation of Batman that I got to know through the animated series and then ultimately through comic books. Like I felt like no one really got Batman right, and that's because if you look at the Tim Burton films and then you look at Schumacher's films, like Tim Burton, Batman kills in Tim Burton's Batman. And automatically for me, that's like, well, that's not Batman. Batman doesn't kill. Like he beats up, he maims, he might stab, but he never kills. At least never with the intention of killing. Sometimes his actions have the consequences of someone unfortunately dying, but it's never because he ultimately made the choice to kill someone. It's always because Batman, to me, and Paul Dini said this beautifully in his animated series too, and I think he did it in an episode in Justice League. Batman cares about humanity. Batman has compassion. He'll ultimately always choose saving a life, regardless of whose life it is. He always chooses ultimately trying to save a life because it all boils back to him not being able to save the life of his parents. So for me, like Tim Burton's Batman aren't really Batman, and then Schumacher's Batman, obviously, it's you can make an argument it's West Batman, but that to me is not my Batman either. You know what I'm saying? So when Nolan's Batman Begins came out, I was like, holy crap, someone finally got Batman right. They got the compassion element, the human element. They got some of it wasn't a lot, but they got a little bit of the whole detective, world's greatest detective element. They showed the mythos of why he is the way he is. They didn't just show his parents died. That's why he's all crazy. They were like, no, his parents died, and Batman finds out because of why? Because of poverty, because people are poor and they're desperate and they're hungry. And this whole crime syndicate. And it's obviously, for me, it's like you can very clearly tell Christopher Nolan and everybody else he had around him clearly read the comic books. Like it's heavily inspired by Frank Miller in Year One and all these other Batman things. So for me, Batman Begins, I was like, wow, that's like it's almost the perfect Batman film. And it shows Bruce Wayne really well too, as like how he uses the persona of Bruce Wayne to cover up for Batman, so no one can ever really connect to because they're just way too different. Like Because if you really think about it, it's like, oh, Bruce Wayne came back after 7 years, and then suddenly there's a new Batman. But it makes sense if you think about how he portrays Bruce Wayne compared to what Batman is. So, so I was legit fighting between Batman Begins and Dark Knight, because up until this point for me, Dark Knight to me was like the perfect Batman film, in the sense of like, in order to truly understand who Batman is, you have to have that antithesis. You have to have the yin to the yang, the pro to the con, and that ultimately, in all of Batman lore, is the Joker. The Joker reinforces who Batman is by being the complete opposite of what Batman is, right? The Joker doesn't give a crap about human life. He doesn't care about anyone or anything, and he'll use anything and anyone to try to prove a point, which is that and everyone's one bad day away from being him, right? That's the whole point of the Joker. So ultimately, and that was
your number one is Dark Knight Rises.
My number one is Batman Forever by. No, ultimately, my number one is The Dark Knight. And listen, and the reason why Batman Begins is in number two, especially if you just heard me just praise Batman Begins, is because I was like, I can't have all three Batman films as my top three. I gotta vary it up a little bit. So I gave myself that constraint. That being said, I would honestly put the whole trilogy as my number one, but that feels kind of cheap too. Like my number one is the Dark Knight trilogy, technically speaking. I don't want to do that either. So yeah, my number one's the Dark Knight. And I know a lot of people complain about it, like it's not really a Batman film, it's a Joker film. I completely disagree. If you really watch the film and analyze it, Joker has almost as much time, if not a little bit less time, than Batman himself. Ultimately, it's a Batman film. It's really it's not a Bruce Wayne film. That was the first one, right? Where we get Bruce Wayne. We don't get Batman to like halfway through the film. And then right at the beginning
at exactly the halfway point.
Yeah,
when he reveals the suit.
Yeah. And in The Dark Knight, though, we get Batman right away. He introduces the Joker, and then we get Batman cleaning up the streets by finding Scarecrow, right? It's right away like it's Batman. It's a Batman film. That's what I'm saying. And Batman Begins establishes that Batman really is who Bruce Wayne is. Like Batman is really Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, the billionaire, is the cover-up, who he really ultimately is. And the comic books do this all the time too. And the video games and the animated series, Batman is the real person. That's who he really is, what he really wants to do. And Dark Knight establishes that so well, in my opinion, which is ultimately the ultimate opinion. So whatever anyone thinks is stupid and wrong. I'm just kidding. It's all subjective. That's the beauty of art. But in my opinion, it's a Batman film. It's a perfect Batman film because despite the odds, despite everything that's happening, like, oh, sorry about that noise. Batman is willing to compromise certain morals or ethics, right? Except the one, which is never take a life. Always try to save a life if you can, but never take a life. And ultimately, that's what the film is, because he's presented with that dilemma because of the Joker. Because the Joker is constantly taking lives. He's killing everyone, and he's putting the blame on Batman, right? So because Batman doesn't take off the mask, he's going to kill another officer, or he's going to blow up a hospital and all this crazy shit. But Batman never relents in taking this dude's life. Even at the end, when he finally throws him off the building, defending himself, right? It was self-defense. He didn't even like pick him up and throw it. The Joker was over him with like a knife and a bomb, and he throws him over self-defense, but he still chooses to save the Joker. And even Joker says, "You can't let me go, can you? You're an unmovable object." Like, and I was like, yes, that's freaking Batman. Like, someone finally got it. Like the mythos of who Batman is and the character of who Batman is. And Bruce Wayne isn't Batman. Batman is Batman. Bruce Wayne is the cover-up. The movie to me just eloquently presents it. Now, that being said, is it a perfect Batman film? No, I don't think so. There's a couple of things I do have a few issues with. Namely, the ending. Not so much Batman taking on the responsibility of everything, but the way how he couldn't save Dent. I feel like, at least the way he's presented in the comic books, like Batman would have figured out a way to spare Dent's life and save Gordon's kid. But I get the context of why Nolan did it in the film. But just, yeah, I have so much to say that I'm baffled, but just the whole symbolism of what Batman is, true sacrifice, righteousness, the incorruptible, right? Batman's willing to do what others can't, right? He figures out his limit, and Batman legitimately has no limits when it comes to right or wrong. The so much. I just love it, dude. I've easily watched. This is my most watched film in my life. Legitimately, I've watched this film like 30 times by now. I'm not even kidding. Legit. When it came out in the theater, I watched it like 4 times in the theater, and then when I bought it on Blu-ray, I watched it like 5 times that first year, and a couple of times the years after that. So it's just like, it's my favorite Batman film. Is it a perfect film? No, you can make arguments for it, but in terms of like what Nolan was trying to say with Batman, what Nolan thinks Batman represents for himself, and then what ultimately Batman really is, I think Nolan did it. Chef's kiss, a perfect job of doing it for me. So my number one is The Dark Knight, and then also too we get the great Hans Zimmer score, man. The motifs of Batman being 2 notes, right? Hans Zimmer loves 2 notes, right? But if I just do automatically, that's Batman. Or the whole concept of like a single violin string, and all you're doing is slowly crawling up the string, and you automatically hear, oh, it's Joker. You automatically hear that's the motif of Joker. And I just think, and the first, I don't know if it's the first use for film, but I know it was Nolan's first use of IMAX, the IMAX camera for this film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, again, chef's kiss. Now to the point where like it's almost like a lot of films use IMAX camera now because of Dark Knight. So, and then Heath Ledger got, I haven't talked about it because it's been talked about to death, but Heath Ledger got the freaking Oscar for Joker because it's a brilliant performance, and I think he truly understood what Joker was. Minus the whole Ace Chemicals burning his skin thing, I think he truly understood who the Joker was as a character. So I could talk about this film for another 3 hours, but I'll stop.
I would say the one thing you didn't touch upon is what you said about Interstellar, right? It's the hope in humanity, right? Mm-hmm. That one scene, like with the 2 boats and the bombs, and like it's up to them to decide who lives and who doesn't. And then at the end, humanity wins.
Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of Batman, right? And the whole point of Joker, because again, Joker's trying to prove like when it comes to like surviving, human beings are selfish, and ultimately it takes one bad day or one bad experience. Everyone's one thing away from being me. That's the whole point of the Joker, right? It's all a joke. It's all a bad joke. And Batman, even though he's all dark and brooding, he beats his criminals. Like the whole point of him is like he believes in humanity and the compassion of humanity and the ability for humanity to have empathy and sympathize with one another, to the point where like he proves it because no one's willing to take a life during that scene, right? And even to the point where like a criminal, like a known criminal, he decides ultimately like to spare everyone's life because he tells them, give him to me, I'll do what you should have done. And he ultimately throws it away, kind of proving that, also proving Batman's point that he thinks everyone's redeemable, even criminals. So it's just, I'll say this too, because I know a lot of people had a problem with Harvey Dent because it wasn't necessarily Two-Face, because it doesn't really have that duality. And yes and no, in my opinion. He does kind of have that duality a little. It's not to the extent of like the comic books where it's literally 2 personalities, but Nolan does interpret it in a way where it ultimately does work for me now, where it's like, it's the 2 sides of the coin, right? The justice side, right? The coin is justice ultimately, right? It's Harvey Dent doing what he thinks is justice, first doing it according to the law. And then when he ultimately sees that fails and it costs him the love of his life, then he seeks justice in the terms of revenge, right? True justice and then personal justice. But
vigilante justice.
Yeah, it's 2 sides of the same coin. And I think in terms of like doing like a modern take of Harvey Dent, the context of Nolan's Batman films is great. That being said, that's like my one problem with the film. It's not really Two-Face the way I know Two-Face, based on, again, my history with it, with the animated series and the comic books and the video games and what have you. It's not that Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing that Two-Face is kind of known for. But the whole point of like the coin decides your fate, he believes in chance and stuff, I was like, okay, I can get away with it. And then also knowing the backstory of like why Nolan did it, I get why he did it. I personally would have enjoyed more if he went with his original idea. So the original idea was that Nolan was going to set up Harvey Dent for the 3rd film. So Dark Knight was supposed to end with like Harvey and Gordon and Batman taking on Joker and ultimately sending him to jail. That was how the movie was supposed to end. in the beginning of the third movie, they were going to have Joker in the courtroom, and Joker was going to be the one who pours acid on Harvey Dent's face in the beginning of the third movie. That was the original idea. But Nolan scrapped that idea because Nolan didn't like the idea of having a cliffhanger at the end of the film. It goes back to like what you said, his philosophy of making every film like a singular experience, not needing to see a previous film or needing to see the next one to see how it concludes. Every film is its own standalone film. So ultimately, that's why he kind of like, in some sense, yeah, I kind of see it. He kind of rushed the Harvey Dent storyline into The Dark Knight. But I mean, it's not that big of a deal, honestly.
No, I think he made it work for what it was.
Yeah.
Right,
We almost had the same top one, but
almost.
legit,
I was going back and forth between Dark Knight and Batman Begins.
I was legit. I always take a walk every day, and I took my walk right before we recorded. And I was legit just running into trees, like, oh god, is it Batman Begins or Dark Knight? I don't know. But ultimately, I told myself, you have to choose one Batman film. You can't choose two or three. Because originally I had Dark Knight, Batman Begins, and then Inception. Then I was like, I can't have two Batman films. I need to give myself that challenge, I guess. So
same with me. I didn't want to put all three Batman films.
Or else it would have been just all three Batman films.
Yeah.
These nerds. But
no, Dark Knight Rises wouldn't have been top three. But still, I didn't want to pick like two Batman films. Had to be one. I also thought about now putting it as my number one because I wanted to separate myself from like the comic book fan that I am and be like, okay, let's just look at it purely as a film.
Mm-hmm.
And the story and like maybe like just the ideas of what the film is. But I think ultimately it was the philosophy of what Batman represents that kind of pushed it up for me.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what? Like, I thought about that too, not choosing a Batman film as my number one. Because it's not technically an original idea, right? It's a product. It's
IP.
It's an IP. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. It's an IP that's already established, but it's honestly the reason also why I got into Nolan films in the first place. I was like, who is this guy who directed finally my favorite Batman film? And then, and then also too like, I'm not gonna put all three Batman films, but at the same time, it's my list, and I freaking love Batman.
Mm-hmm.
He's the ultimate for me. So it's like, of course, I'm gonna put a Batman film as my number one.
Yeah.
Like, no offense to Christopher Nolan, I love you, but Batman's always number one. So.
But also you gotta think about, so one thing I kept saying is how Christopher Nolan talks about the individual and like pursuit of like the individual's philosophy and implications that it has on the rest of the world. Dark Knight changed the way people watch movies. You know what I mean?
Dark Knight changed comic book movies in general.
No, but I think just movies all around. Like it's
movies all around. Oh no, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's affected the way studios approach the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it affected comic book films immediately, but it's the way studios approach film it's the whole reason why studios don't want to make films unless it has IP, already established IP, and it kind of sucks, but it's the way things have gone. It's the way that people are making the industry adapt. And no one wants to go see something original. And Christopher Nolan's kind of like the only guy who's like, I fucked up. I need to keep doing my own thing and keep pushing it. To the point where now Christopher Nolan is the IP. And you only go to see a film because Christopher Nolan's name is on it.
Oh, definitely. Like you look at the trailers for like when Inception first came out, the trailers for Interstellar, and even right now the trailers for Tenet. You just look at them and you go, what the fuck is this about? Like, no information. It's just visuals, like something about time and crime, but the crime hasn't happened yet, and people move backwards. It's like, what is this Inception Part 2? Like, what? But that's the whole point, right? Where it's like now, as a commodity, the studios and the audience automatically trust Nolan.
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, as long as his name's attached to it, they're like, they know you're at least gonna leave discussing it at the very least.
Mhm.
Whether you like it or not is up to you, but you're gonna at least leave being with something to talk about and think about.
Yeah.
It's almost, I would say it's almost in the same vein of like a Quentin Tarantino, right? Quentin Tarantino, like he'll tell you what the film's about, but you still go watch it and you're enthralled because of the dialogue and everything. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
and he only does original films too. It's one of the few like directors now too that could still get away with it, where it's like, I just do what I do because this is what I want to do. And people go, yeah, we'll watch it for sure.
Yeah, but it's crazy because like Martin Scorsese had to do Irishman with Netflix because no other studio wanted to do it.
Yeah,
It's like it's based off a book too, though, isn't it?
it's based off the memoir of the main
The
character.
memoir, yeah. So like, it's based off of an already established like IP. The name Martin Scorsese, like, people are going to go watch it, and yet studios don't want to do it.
Yeah, which is weird too, because I actually really love
Yeah.
it. I don't know if I'm
But then,
crazy to watch it again because it's long as heck, but it's really
yeah.
good.
But then you get someone like Christopher Nolan, who like he can go wherever he wants. I think he chooses to stay with Warner Brothers, but he can go wherever he wants. People are going to go, yeah, take all my money, make what you want.
I think he chooses to stay with Warner Brothers too because they already have that relationship, and Warner Brothers obviously trusts him to where they go, yeah, we'll throw money at that. Go do it. So, because then also too, he gave him the Dark Knight, and he literally established like the universe for them almost, right? Yeah. Oh my God, we can keep talking, but we got to end soon because you have a thing. So let's really quickly. I'll go first. We're gonna rank the rest of the films. We're not gonna discuss them. You can discuss them in the comments down below, or shoot us a message on our Twitters and our social media handles, which we will plug at the end of the show. But real quick, my number 9 was Following. I'm sorry. My number 8 is Memento. 7 was Prestige. 6 was The Dark Knight Rises. 5 was Batman Begins, and number 4 was Dunkirk. Brian?
Okay. Number 9 is Memento. Number 8, Dark Knight Rises. Number 7, Interstellar. Where am I? Number
6,
Inception. Number 5, Prestige. Number 4, Dark Knight.
And it if you really think about the concept of the film, it makes sense based on how we discussed. It's almost like we made a separate list of Nolan films, right? Because my number 4 is Dunkirk, which I honestly think that's his masterpiece. So it's like it's what I think Nolan's best film literally is, but it's not my favorite film. So yeah. Well, that was it. No, we're not gonna end it like that. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I personally had a lot of fun revisiting a lot of these films. I saw Following for the first time. I like it. I don't think it's his greatest or my favorite, but it's a good film. Definitely check out all his films. I highly recommend them. Really sit down though and take the time to watch them and watch them a second time too. So
get a notepad and a pencil and just write stuff down.
Yeah, no, watch if you're watching these films for the first time, just watch it. Be confused if you need to be confused. Then the second time, be not as confused.
Right.
Enthralled. Brian, real quick, where can the people find you?
On Instagram at Kuno_stars. And David, where can they find you?
They can find me on everything at DavidBMusic21. That's Twitter and Instagram. You can find me on Twitch with that as well. And you can find me on YouTube as David B Music. But also now, finally, we can say that we have our own YouTube channel, Speak Freely Pod, which of course you're watching this on. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, put on that notification to when we drop episodes. We drop episodes every Monday. Leave a like and a comment, or even a dislike. But don't. Please like us. I need the validation. And we also have some social media. You can find us at Speak Freely Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Please go follow us on there for updates and notifications as well. And I think we're looking into a lot of stuff. Like I'm just going to say this. Yes, we know the audio is weird because Zoom is weird and we're using Zoom. We're working on it. Please be patient with us.
And I know that's not a sponsor.
And I know the song's loud, but it's rock and roll, baby. If it's too loud, you're too old. Um, and yeah, well, thank you to everyone who's watched so far and left a comment and told us about the episode. We really appreciate it. To all our friends and family too. Thank you for dealing with us as we figure out how to do this along the way. And I hope you tell everyone about us and you stick around for the ride. So, with that being said, I still don't have an official sign off, so I'm just gonna.
If you have one, leave a comment down below.
If you have any suggestions, like just end it with like a good night and good luck. Is that a good one? Does anyone get that reference? I've done this before. I'll do this. I think this might be it, where it's like, all right, and with that we say adieu.